Weird. See, this will work better. Come on, here we go. Here we go. So you should be seeing the right thing now. Okay. Hey, welcome. I'm back. Sorry. Had a little technical difficulties and I was a little late. Let's get going. Why talk about certs anyway? Because I want to see more people actually doing the work, particularly some of the senior guys. And we'll talk about why. And the second piece is for employers. I really like to see folks being more supportive and directive around this subject. Okay, it's going to get into some things. I always talk about this stuff, right? Specific brands and models, illustration purposes only. There's no endorsement from any vendor in any way, right? It doesn't represent the business process of any employer or client, past or present. This is based on my own work and study. I only include equipment I have experience with. So we're going to talk about certs I'm familiar with, right? There are lots of them. Some of them I can't talk about this. I have never done them, right? VMware, I've never done VMware certs. So couldn't tell you about it. Time of writing, I'm not receiving any compensation or inducement from any vendor. And also, let me make sure, yeah, I'm off mute. Hey. Okay, certification. Now, North American. Love that. The action or process of providing something or someone or something with an official document attesting to a status or level of achievement. An official document attesting to a status or level of achievement. Okay, certification. Okay, fairly straightforward. I want to take a little dive into something just to be clear about something as we get into this, right? So I want to make clear the value, what the value is, and then the question is like, should I, and how do I get my company to pay for it? These are great questions. And if you're an employer, I want to kind of turn that question around. It's like, well, why should I be paying for this? And think about that for a minute. That's a great question because you have that problem of, look, I train a bunch of guys up and they leave. That also says a lot about the company. I think if you have the right environment, you can train and keep, right? Within limits. Obviously, you can't pay a CCIE like just above Cisco certified internet networking engineer, just above minimum wage. You may have hired him at 10 years ago, or her, right? Not going to happen. So let's get into this a little bit. Triple constraints. Well, this does matter, right? The thing is, there's some time constraints. The certifications for Cisco, at least, and everyone else, they change, right? New software versions, I have certifications in Windows NT 3.5, shows how old I am. No one cares anymore, right? Long past. So, you've got to complete the certs in some sort of timely fashion. You start for your, whatever the equivalent of the MCSE is now, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, which new titles, right? Obviously, if you don't finish in time, they're onto a new version, you've got to start over again, right? Quality or scope, like going to CCIE is more than doing the CCENT, the Cisco Certified Entry Networking Technician, right? And budget, of course, this stuff does cost money. Both your employer and you need to pony up some money. Even in the best employer situation, you got to pony up some money. It's going to happen, right? So let's kind of move into this. So it's a business. Let's not kid ourselves, right? So if you're a tech company, you create the program. Instructors need to be certified, so they need to go through some training, and then they probably have some post training testing and certification before they're official. So if you're a training company, typically, so if I walk in with a CCMP, okay, the route switch, there's going to be a certain classes I can teach if I've met a certain minimum score, and then typically they make you like sit through the course and then like teach it under guidance. So there's some time you're paying me to just like observe and practice before I'm teaching on my own. So there's money to be made there, right? There's a cost, certainly. There's all these exam guides and all the rest of it. They get published, right? There's often Cisco Press, right? So Microsoft has their own press that they make these books and they publish them. People buy them. Some people buy them and never use them. That's even better, right? So you pay me money and I get nothing for it. Perfect, right? With the live training classes, the training partner pays a percentage to the vendor per student, right? In addition to whatever materials they bought, there's some agreement. It's not just I paid for the books I'm good. There's a fee attached to it. And of course the risk, it's the training partner's problem to fill the classes. Certainly the vendor is incentivized to help their vendors fill the classes, but the risk is put on the vendor, not for the most part, not on the original manufacturer. Okay. Each person taking the class becomes an advocate for your product. So when I'm Microsoft certified, I'm Cisco certified, like Microsoft certified, not Novell, I wasn't pushing Novell. Part of it is because I don't know Novell as well. I was a certified Novell engineer. I was a Microsoft certified systems engineer. So that helps me be an advocate for that product. And it goes beyond that, actually. That knowing the intricacies of the product, kind of getting a full view of the capabilities of the product, that when you say, oh, can do this, you're like, oh yeah, we can do that. I know that because I've been through this training. Okay. And then certified candidates out in the job market give some momentum to your product. So, Cisco's dominance in the networking market, some of that it's the fact that there's a lot of Cisco certified guys. So you go to hire somebody, oh, I need this consultant. I can hire a CCP, CCIE. They can help me with my problem. Right? I go hire CCNA, CCNTs to be, to work internally to do things. Maybe CCNPs are better, right? That gives them an advantage. Now, I think it's good to be honest about this and then move on. It is what it is. So what is it? It's typically vendor defined. There are some organizational certifications. So the Computer Technology Industry Association, CTIA, has things like A+. And A+ is supposed to be vendor neutral, so you want to be working in a like service depot doing like hardware repairs, A+, typically what you want. But most of them are vendor, Microsoft, VMware, Cisco, bunch of them, right? The vendor just defines those learning objectives. They hopefully have some mapping to needs in industry. So I'll give you an example. Microsoft, for the longest time, has had the ability, you can use your Microsoft server as a router. You put multiple interfaces in it, and it could be a router. Now, a network engineer, I would never do that. Why? Well, it's just not as efficient to use that as a router than to use a device that's built from the hardware up to be a router. So I wouldn't do it. Now, I have used Microsoft's routing and remote access services for the remote access piece, L2GP, PPTP. But before that, before those protocols came out, we used to throw in a digiboard, throw a bunch of modems on the end, have a bunch of dial-in lines on a hunt group, and that's how our employees would dial in. It was cheaper than buying a product like a Shiva Land Rover, that which was basically a bunch of modems in a box, and you'd set up authentication against it. The routing and remote access gave us the advantage to use their Microsoft 80 credentials. There wasn't a separate access database we needed to control. We did need to grant privileges so we can make sure that which employees had the ability to dial in, but giving that dial-in capability was something that they didn't need a separate set of credentials for. Okay. But having like a 40-hour class just on using your Microsoft server as a router, I don't think anyone's going to pay for that because it's just, why? You typically need to do one or more proctored exams. So Cisco with the program, you can do the CCENT 1 and 2, get your CCNA. First one gets you the CCENT certification, right? And show these examples of CCNA, but CCNP, these 4 tests, maybe 5, right? So CCNA, and then for route and switch, it's route, switch, and troubleshooting. So, and of course, those all have an expense attached to them, and time, and the rest of it, right? Okay, how you do it? You can do vendor-approved in-person classes. They have vendor-approved online, vendor-approved self-studies, third-party books that may not have the official blessed, but they're there. I'm going to tell you you're going to need to do additional reading. Just showing up at a class and going through the class. Maybe if you've done this thing for 20 years, maybe you can just go to the class and pass it. I doubt it. Probably have to do some additional reading. Okay. There are labs in class, and then you're going to want additional practice, and particularly for things like CCIE, you're going to want additional practice with home lab simulator, something or other. Right? There's exam simulators. Experience is helpful, and that one I could really speak to. When I first started certifying, by the time I got my Microsoft certs, I had been doing a lot in Microsoft for a couple of years. I was comfortable. My Cisco certs, I was pretty green. So when I went for the test, Advanced Cisco Router Configuration, that was the name at the time, there were some of those questions, particularly on token ring. I had no experience with token ring. I had in class, and we didn't even get to lab it because they didn't have token ring versions of the Cisco hardware. We just got to see examples. So I had to remember, and the whole thing looked different. So it was hard. It was really hard. Experience is very helpful. I'll tell you with the Microsoft certs, when I took them, I can remember some of those questions, and I could see in my head, like, you pull down this menu, it's down here. I could practically tell you what it was, the fourth thing down or something like that. And that, so answering questions, I answered fairly quickly. I finished early. I got a very high score, right? Cisco stuff was more of a squeaker, right? In the end, money. Yeah, you are going to have to invest. And even if your employer is going to do most of it, there's still going to be some expense on your side. I'll guarantee it. Top employers can minimize that, but you're going to have to put some skin in this game, right? Okay. And what do you get out of it? So, okay, candidate, salary bump. Okay, maybe not available for your employer, right? So if your employer is very grade specific and, well, I don't have an opening for the next grade level, so therefore I can't, even though you're now at that level, I can't recognize that because I need to open with HR a position in the new grade level, and we don't have it, I can't justify it. Okay, there's that. You may face that. Right. Certainly, when those higher grade level positions open up in your company, having had the certification, it's easier to distinguish yourself from the other candidates. Right. Now, of course, if everyone follows one advice and they all get certification happy, it's going to make it harder. But I think given the barriers, I don't think that's going to be a huge problem. I think it's going to take a while. Now, I will say you've got people coming into the U.S. that are well certified. Right, that's kind of their pitch. When I used to post on monster.com for positions, I get people from particularly India, the Philippines, and Canada. Not to say they're equivalent, but certainly for the Canadians, hey, they were going to make more money down particularly in the boom years in Silicon Valley. It's clear. And of course, if they got the right company, maybe they can get in with some options and come home as billionaires. Wouldn't that be great? Okay. That certainly kind of young, but well, I got all this experience. Yeah, it helps. All right. When I was a Compaq accredited systems engineer, when there was a Compaq computers, that I get to bypass, I could bypass the first two levels of support, go straight to third level support. Because of the resources I had access to in the training, they felt comfortable in allowing me to bypass those levels. Because frankly, like level one was going to be, do you have the latest ROM packs? That was their term for latest firmware and drivers on your system. They'd ask me these questions. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Non-compact components. Sure. Level one guy, I was gonna stump most of the time. I was getting kicked up, and I could skip through a higher level for that. It's not true for all of them, but it's there. Access to certain jobs. In the consulting world, you got to think about it this way. So I need to sell this consultant into a client. Saying the guy's a CCIE can be an easy sell. Oh, CCIE and route switch. Oh, that's great. Or a CCI data center or CCI wireless, right? I got a wireless problem. CCI wireless. Hey, this is not the right guy to bring in. We're stumped. We should bring in this top level person, right? Okay. Because other companies don't necessarily want to spend the time training you. So there you go. They're going to hire you for that. Recognition. Excuse me, I'm a little congested. Let's face it. 1 year plus a cert, versus 1 year without, 20 years with certs, or 20 years without. What resume looks better? Now, look, this isn't a be-all, end-all. It's not. But it is a distinguisher. I used to, in the days when they give us all these logos, I used to put them on a resume. Like you saw right away, Cisco certified, Microsoft certified, A plus. I had those logos on my resume, right? So you got this thing. There was obviously eye catching right there. Boom, here it is. Okay. You're signaling to your client or your employer that you have initiative, that you've gone and done this. Even if your employer's grooming, I used to, at one company, I had a large budget per person. I sent them to all these classes because I had a lot of work I needed to get done. I needed to be good at it, so I sent them for training. Not everyone was hip to actually passing their certs. There was a couple of us who were very go-getting to do it. So I diverted more training money to them. Yeah, that's the way it works. The other people, well, I still haven't passed it because I'm so busy, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. This other person is showing they can do that and do more work. I'm giving them better training. I goose their resume a lot. Okay. And the other reason to do it is you learn about features that you may not use every day or at all. And like the routing and remote access services, right? Maybe you're never going to use it. Cisco, certainly some of the things, ARP inspection, DHCP snooping, they're interesting. You may not choose to use them. They're there. So in certain situations, certainly as a consultant, you walk in, somebody's running it, and you're like, this isn't set up. I don't think this is set up right. Let me double check. Go back to your materials. Yeah, this isn't right. This is why they're having problems. Right? Or you're presented with a new problem. You could say, well, maybe this is the time to dig out that DHCP snooping. Maybe this is the right time. Now, what's the employer, the client, get out of this? Well, first of all, particularly the deeper the cert. And I got to say, CCNA has really beefed up since I first took it. Originally, CCNA didn't have all that much. They were going to put a lot into the advanced Cisco router configuration, and it was a lot about OSI model, so it's theoretical, and then some basic features. I can make it work, right? The new one, hey, they've added BGP to it. That's big, right? As well as OSPF. I think we may have done a little RIP, original CCNA and CCNA. I don't recall. It's been that long, but yeah, we didn't do a deep dive on anything. Okay, and you've shown a certain mastery of the product. Now, I want to be really, really clear. Some people are really good at taking tests. They don't have any practical sense. You gotta weed that out. They may come into you with this great set of certs, and they just don't get it. I'd say less so for CCIE because of the very intense lab they do. But certainly I've seen CCNPs, CCNAs that I look at them, you passed your certs, really? They just didn't seem to have any real sense. Okay. This other point I think is really important to make. You learn how the vendor wants you to do, how they want it implemented. And certainly this is true with Microsoft. Now, some things back in the day, you may not remember NetBEUI. NetBEUI is a non-routable protocol, but it was kind of like Apple Talk, where the devices all, before we had a PIPA, automatic IP address assignment, this was a way for the machines to all agree on common IDs so that you could have a network without having to go through and sign static IPs for all the devices. Microsoft loved NetBEUI. It was easy, but it was non-routable, right? IPX would probably been a better choice if you're going to do that. But you learn these things. This is how they want to do it. Then you can riff from there. You can go on and do, yeah, I'm not going to run that. I'm just not running NetBEUI. It's dumb. It's useless. I want a routable protocol. Okay. And you may be able to reduce the dollars you're spending on outside consulting. And I want to talk about wireless surveys. So certainly Air Magnet, they have some training, probably Ekahau, some of the survey tools, plus that you can do your Cisco CCNA, CCNP for wireless and wireless surveys. Well, when I've outsourced them, it's about $2,000 per survey. Now, the rigs typically run you around 10 grand. By the time you license the hardware you need for it, the rest of it, It's probably about 10 grand, and plus training, it's kind of expensive. If you're a larger organization, though, if I have to survey, and these were relatively small sites, I was paying about 2 grand a day. So if I need to spend five days surveying, that's 10 grand right there. That's paid for the rig. If I have a couple of sites that size, well, I paid for the rig and the training right there. So, getting the kind of training helps you do that. And certainly the experience of wireless surveys, of learning how to do them properly, helps you understand all the issues like attenuation, density, um, co-channel contention, and a lot of the other issues you're going to run into in your wireless designs. It's a very useful thing to do. And you may find interesting things too. I had one where an antenna was touching some ductwork, and you could actually see that the signal was being pulled along the ductwork, at least in 2.4 gig. So understanding all those concepts are great. Now, there's an article that Global Knowledge, I saw it on my LinkedIn feed. I linked to it here. It references an IDC survey that was done by Microsoft. And they specifically said a lot of what we're talking about now for both the employers and employees, right? So salary and sort of job quality of their experience, the rest of it. Now, obviously, both Microsoft and Global Knowledge are biased, and they're paying IDC. Microsoft is paying IDC for this. Okay, it's true. I think in general that what they're saying is true. Certainly, emphasis may be different. Certainly, as a training vendor, you're going to be definitely polishing that apple as much as you can. But I think it's a reasonable thing to look at. So maybe you want to find this particular article, and it may help you in that argument you have with your employer about doing this work. And certainly I want to talk about, again, going back to they may be able to save money. I've certainly seen companies that had low-paid people, no certs, no training, and their answer to every problem was, we got to call in consultants. I can tell you as a consultant, I'm expensive. Why am I expensive? Well, all the time it takes us to negotiate the contract, for all the people that don't pay, for all of the proposals that go out that don't get acted on, that get dropped. I need to recover all that time. Plus all the time, and as a consultant, outside consultant, you don't get paid vacation or anything else. You need to make sure that when you are working, you're making up for the time you take off, and your whatever your accounting is, and your marketing. There's all kinds of expenses you got to collect. So it gets expensive. So just calling consultants all the time is not a great answer. Clearly, when you're small enough, like if you can't afford to have someone full time, that sort of, I do the mailroom, I do a little IT, and I do this, yeah, they're not going to get a lot of certs because you're not going to pay them that much when they do. I get that. It's the truth, but for those folks, oftentimes you're going to then leverage that experience into a job that's full time and sort of go from there. Okay. I hear this a lot, and I'm going to just put a maybe on that. The first thing is the dollars, right? You can look for things like some of these online training, self-study books to try and keep your costs down. You are investing in your career or in your employee. And particularly early in your career, that's really important. That you're not at peak salary. And if you're going to get on the right salary curve, having those certifications is going to put you on the right curve. You won't just be like a network admin, you're going to be a network engineer or a network architect. You're working your way towards those. And for the employer, I want to be clear, it's always cheaper to grow a CCNP or a CCIE than to buy one. Because I'm going to have when I have a CCIE, you're not taking any risk. But if I don't, and you're trying to get me there, well, I may just not have the initiative to do it. Therefore, you spend money on training, doesn't go anywhere. I had someone at one company, we spent a lot of money on training, never certified, and frankly, it wasn't clear that they really brought anything back from that training class. And what I mean by that is, so like Microsoft SQL Server, are there better ways to do the backups? Should we be doing different, like reindexing the tables. So we're looking at some of that. There's a lot you can get out of that class. I didn't see it. They ended up getting fired. So there is a risk. That's what's an employer, right? But it is cheaper. You invest in the people, and again, that's why when I did that program, those that were doing really well with it, it's like I kept throwing in certain. I'll mention her by name, Donna. Donna Vincent. You can find her in my LinkedIn. Oh yeah, Donna was super happy. It's like, oh hey, I found this self study. Can you buy it for me? Oh yeah, you do it. It was great. And then she'd do the most amazing things for us. I still am think one of my best hires, right? And it was that investment we made in her paid off in spades. Okay, you're gonna need time now. You need time to do this. Yeah, class alone will never do it. Sit there for your 5 days, whatever. Got to get practice in. Got to do your reading. It's gonna take a while. It's not like you just sit down. I'm gonna sit down one weekend. Now, A plus, yeah, that was a weekend for me, pretty much. Right, and I was still pretty green, but the material wasn't that hard. It wasn't that. Um, it wasn't that demanding, so I didn't need. It was It was on VHS. Again, showing my age. Some VHS, and I went through all in the workbooks and the rest of it, and then did the practice test until I felt comfortable, and I took the tests, passed them. There were 3 of them at the time, but it did take time. So I call it maybe a week, maybe a longer of time to do it. The best will give their people time on the clock to work on learning. And I'm going to say even more than that, the best are going to also direct their people into the training they need. So I told the person that I ended up firing, well, trying to direct them into other more fundamental classes like A+, I thought would have been great because sometimes troubleshooting skills just seem missing. In fact, there was also a really, really good comp package to this really good troubleshooting class. I really appreciated what they taught you. And like one of their things was, look, what's the least invasive, like quick thing I can do just to eliminate something? Let's go for that first. So I'm not having to do reboots. I'm not having to kick people off servers. Is there a quick thing I can do? And you go, okay, that's probably it. There were some great classes like that I would have liked to direct this person into. They weren't amenable to it. Didn't work out, right? There are some things like you could have severe test anxiety. There are people, hypnotists, neurolinguistic programming. There's some things that people say, yeah, we can deal with that. Certainly a lot of practice, and of course these simulator test sims are better at giving you an experience of actually doing it. It can help with that. If you have I need severe medication every time I get tested, probably not going to work out for you, right? And this is the yes, right? If you have some sort of processing deficit, it means you can't do the test in the time required, like severe dyslexia. That's a serious problem, right? Well, severe dyslexia and things like network engineering, I think, could be a problem anyway, because you got to type out things, and that's hard for you because there are things like P's and D's and B's that all start to look all alike. That's super hard. Right, I get it. You're not a candidate for this, but you're probably not in this career anyway. So for most of us, and well, I'm not, I don't study, fine, right? You can, it's kind of where you're coming from. You want it, do it, okay? Practicals, okay, classes, books are cheapest, typically. The books by themselves are okay, but they do lack that lab practice. They don't have that. Now, as a professional educator, I can tell you that among my many things that I've done in my life, there are a lot of different learning styles. Some people, that practicality, getting their fingers around it, is going to be something that's going to be really work for them really well. Some people are going to do really good with the book, and the practice and the lab's kind of cemented, but like they can just like see the book, and that's great. We're all a little different. You're going to want to work to your strengths. So, and we'll kind of get into that as we look at the different options, right? Now, I prefer ebooks, Kindle and such, because I can load on my tablet. I don't have to carry the tome around. And most of these books are like 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000 pages. They're big, they're bulky, right? And maybe I want to bounce. I've got something I'm working on. I want to review some stuff out of the route class for troubleshooting. I can have both of them on the tablet, read the stuff I want to route, go back over to troubleshooting. right? So the ebooks are a nice option. They're typically somewhat cheaper. For some print books, they can be like less than half. For tech books, maybe they're like 30% less, 20% less. There's a markdown, but it's not as severe. I think part of that is simply low circulation. And that's also why the cost is so high. A book for a CCIE, there's the CCIE numbers running in, I think, are in the 5-figure range right now. And now there's a couple different ones, right? But there's only that many, and then there's that many more times people that actually have tried, and of course, people have to research and all the rest of it. But the market for a CCIE book is fairly small, so I can't charge you $2 for it. Okay. Now this requires some motivation. Okay, then computer-based training. Okay, cheapest typically other than self-study books. You got to have some motivation, right? The idea is they stamped out this thing, and then they're shipping it out to a lot of people. They're not paying an instructor to go week after week to present the material, right? So it reduces their cost. But you've got to have that momentum. And you're like, oh, I got interrupted. I can get back to it. Certainly, I've done that. That's one of the things. If that's something that's hard for you to do, probably not the best way to go about it. Okay. Some have embedded labs or practices, but they can be very limited in what they can do. Now, I haven't used one recently. Last one, I remember the labs, they were very formulaic. I had to get everything right, down to capitalization. And I don't mean like password capitalization, which obviously needs to be right, but if I had caps lock on the command, it wasn't going to recognize it because it needed to recognize this exact string. Okay, and then things like question mark may not work. Certainly in some of the newer sims, things like the do command may not work. When you're in config mode and using the do to issue a command you normally do in enable mode, that may not work, okay? Then there's classes, online classes. There's live ones, which essentially now, the technology is there for both the instruction and labs that we no longer have to drag everybody to a class. Years ago, I needed to have my team trained on a Microsoft Terminal server. This was in the NT4 days. There were not many being offered because it wasn't a very popular course. The only one running at the time was in Boston. And so I got a book. I'm like, no problem. Vendor's happy to have me there. And then we find out the All-Star Game's playing in Boston. So we just could not get a hotel room for less than like $400 or $500 a night. This was like 20 years ago. So $400 a night was ridiculous, right? So it was cheaper for us actually in that case, since there were three of us, three of my engineers, and then my boss was an extra sort of like, hey, you want to show up? That we paid for the class. We paid them a certain amount, and they presented the class to us. But now, with a lot of these things, that problem doesn't exist. We just would have done it virtually. We wouldn't have been in Boston. We would have done it from back here in California on a little different time zone. It would have been a little ugly for having to get up early all the time to deal with the Boston folks, but doable. Now more than used to be. Probably some kind of virtual lab may or may not be real gear. So they may have an interface that you're actually interacting with real equipment. Using like RDP or some other method to deal with a lab setup somewhere in the world, but it can be virtual. It may be some sort of simulators as well. I remember the days when they were shipping for some of these training classes, they'd be running out of space and they'd ship like trade show containers with the equipment set up in it, and the instructor had to, piece it all together. And again, with these online classes, you got to block out the time since you're not traveling, even if it's traveling just to the training center. Certainly in your office, people are like, hey, can you take this call? No, I can't do it. So there's some discipline required. The difference is that since there is some fixed hours, like, yeah, if your boss is paying for it, and they're like, well, I need you to do this, that, and the other. Like, boss, you just paid thousands of dollars for me to take this class, and now you want me to not sit in it because you've got something right now that somebody else can deal with? Let's figure this out, right? Some of them are offering, so the one I'm familiar with, Stormwinds. So I've done these live online classes with Global Knowledge and a few other vendors. They're fine. there's live plus recorded. Stormwind Studios, they do, if you miss a day, you can go back the prior day. They've taped, and it's available to watch yesterday's material. That's nice. So you can go back and you can watch recording if you miss parts. And you can go back to these things for a long period afterwards. So, like, wow, I really didn't understand. I'm just having a lot of trouble with redistributing into BGP. Fine, let's go to that section. We'll go over that section and we can watch it again, try and figure out what's wrong, right? And as above, both positive and negatives, right? So you're not paying the hotels, you're not hotel, rental car, and food, which can add, given a lot of these training centers are typically going to be in someplace expensive because that's where most of the students are going to be. New York, Boston, San Francisco, right? Probably Miami, although Miami's certainly not as expensive as San Francisco or New York. But if I fly from, I say my job's in Fargo, North Dakota. Okay, and the class in New York, yeah, I mean, I can double the cost of the class easily with the hotel and other expenses. So it adds lots of time. This is great. You don't have to do that, right? But again, you need to block out time. And then the in-person classes, well, and most no longer seem to have labs on site anymore. Same thing with the virtuals. Time and location certainly can be limited. Again, I was mentioning that in the prior segment. And it's easier to meet other students who may be on the same track as you are. So certainly kind of hooking up and, sharing interest and all the rest of it, or experience, resources. And certainly it's kind of easier to buttonhole your instructor, see a moment like, hey, can we talk about this, and kind of dig into some stuff. And sometimes too is as a in an in-person class, there are times that I know we've definitely, when we've had time, we've got a good group of students, we're working, that will play around the labs. We'll try and riff a little, see if we can get deeper in the labs. Hey, what about this? Ask the instructor, well, can we try this? Sure, don't break anything, right? So they're kind of the gold standard, but they're all the most expensive. And they have all those issues, right? If I'm not in New York City, if I'm not in Silicon Valley, where there's a number of training centers here, yeah. Even Sacramento, which is about a 2-hour drive from here, about 100 miles, they don't offer as much in the way these in-person classes they do here in Silicon Valley. So my Sacramento guys may be having to travel, and then that's long enough that it's not good for them really to have to commute back and forth, so you pick up this extra expense. Okay? And then labs. And this is beyond the class itself, so you're going to do some labs. So you're virtual, right? Cheaper, probably, right? They don't take up any space, right? Because think about this. This is the second point. When I'm done with that lab, I can just erase it. If it had like a backup CD, yeah, I can go into a drawer or whatever. Fine. When I have real equipment, I need more power and heat and all the rest of it stuff, and noise. It's the other thing too. You set up a lab in like your home space. One of the things I got to remind you of, probably one of earplugs, because that equipment is often not designed to sit in a public area, so it's loud and it can cause you permanent hearing damage in the higher ranges. That's serious. Okay, and there are limits to what this virtual equipment can and can't do, and also what equipment it is. Right, there may not be a virtual for like the Nexus 7700. Maybe you can't practice on it because there just isn't one to practice with. And certainly what they can do, there are times that you're going to do things and they sort of do like Now, the reboot's fast, super fast. Reboot a device inside the lab, it's sort of like, reload, whoop, I'm back. Okay, physical. Current models are likely too expensive, and even if you're doing this training lab in your office, you may lose access to equipment being taken for emergencies. Got these new like 4451s, the Catalyst 9400 series, 9000 series, 93s, 94s, right? You're doing in your lab, and then somebody's like, "Oh my God, we broke one of the core switches. We're going to pull your 9500 away from you so we can go get the site back up running." And you're like, "But I was in the middle of training." Yeah, that's not. Yeah, we're going to leave the site down so you can finish your training. Probably not likely. And so these older equipment you can find on places like eBay, right? Probably doesn't run the most current versions, and then nor may have all the features you're looking for, or they can have very quirky commands. So as things change, some of the names will change. Um, in a lot of like the 6500 series, it was all MLS QoS, and then 4500 series, it's QoS. The those auto QoS policies, if you're working on QoS for a test of some sort, they look really different between like the SOUP 5, SOUP 6s, SOUP 7s, SOUP 8s. Got it. And then with the latest generation stuff, starting with things like the 3900 series ISRs, the um, licensing can be an issue. So when you do voice stuff, yeah, it needs the UC or UCK9 licensing. And yeah, I got the router for $20 off eBay, but if I can get the license, I may have to shop around a lot to find one that has the right license. The older ones, yeah, you could cheat. I'm just, you could get away with cheating if you weren't caught. So I wanted to run enterprise services. I have a CCO account, so I can get into Cisco. I could download that enterprise services version or IP services, depending on the model, run it on that chassis, assuming it met the minimum specs. The new ones with licensing, though, that's not true. Now, for a lot of Cisco gear, you can turn on an evaluation mode, and you can run stuff in the evaluation mode for long periods. They've said essentially indefinitely for now. They may go back and change that. Now, when you come in, if it was your production shop and you're using that in production, excuse me, yeah, it's going to get you in deep trouble. In your like play lab, you may get they may slap your hand or give you a pass on it. I don't know. Can't speak for Cisco. eBay, great source for the stuff that's cheap. Shipping is going to kill you, right? 3900s are heavy, right? If you bought a 7206, great routers, but they're heavy, right? Buy a chassis, they're not just heavy, they're big. So, and there are things to think about, like the serial wicks for the 3900s, 3800s are less common. People didn't necessarily need those serials the way they used to. They're not using external DSU CSUs like we used to. That more likely they're going to get a T1 wick. Well, you can use a T1 card, right? And you can go online, you could build a T1 crossover cable. Just look at the pinouts. There are some websites that show you. Do you take a regular Ethernet cable, cut the end off, strip it, put the right cables in the right holes, crimp it down, you have a crossover. I've done it. I did it. I needed to do some testing. It worked just fine. So that is one of your options. I can do T1 modules is maybe easier to find, the T1 wicks versus having to find the serial cards. And then, of course, you need the serial crossover cable to switch to DCE, DTE to make that work. Right? You find them on eBay. And in fact, on Amazon even, I was looking, you could find sometimes these physical lab kits that even had a little racking sort of thing to keep it all together, to keep it from falling all over the place. It's $300-400. It's there. You can do it. Right? Heat, noise, right? Careful your ears. They can blow out, right? They're used, so they've only got so much life left in them. So there's that to think about. And then these practice tests. Well, first of all, I got to say why. Why do you want to take the practice test? Well, you want to be comfortable with the testing format. Certainly from my generation, for a lot of particularly the more middle class schools for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised it's pretty universal. Like we went through endless rounds in the United States on SAT testing. So we would get the best SAT scores for our school, which made our high school look better, right? We wanted to be sure you understood, you're used to, you saw the question, you understood like what they're asking, right? You got more of the meat of the question, you weren't stuck in like, what, this is like this, like that is like what? Right. And why do you want to do this? Well, you're going to get graded on your test, so you want to do your best. And of course, they aren't cheap. So even like as an employer, I used to say, I'll pay your testing once. Once. You pass, you're cool. You take 6 times to pass it, I want you to pass it. I'm going to push you to pass it. You're paying for it 5 times. At $300 a pop is $1,800 in total. I paid $300, you paid $1,500. You wanted to be ready for it. The I should have indented that a little differently. I noticed that. And it also takes time every time you take a test. And there's an emotional roller coaster you're going to go through. Not all these tests are created equal. We're going to discuss that in just a moment. Okay, how do you do it? You got to register online, typically, lots of test centers nowadays. I know for me, they've been asking for 2 forms of ID, and they have some very specific requirements about what they are. And they're very fussy about bringing anything with you. They have any sense you're cheating, you may be banned permanently from ever taking an exam from that vendor again, and it may impact your ability to take anybody's certs ever again. So, I can't have Kleenex or a handkerchief or a comb. Everything. The only thing I was allowed to bring into a test center was my driver's license. I had to bring a second form of ID. There was lockers. They locked it up. I left most of the stuff in the car except what I needed to bring in. I locked that in my glove box. Probably shouldn't have told you that. Okay. So these are some of the practicals, right? And then for the research, be sure to leave time before your certification expires, just in case you don't pass, because there's often a delay before you're allowed to take tests again. So if you're, my cert's up Friday, I'm going to take it Thursday, that could be a problem. All you need to do is just mess it up somehow. And some of those ACRC tests I was taking a long time ago, I squeaked under. Oh, it killed me. It's out of 1,000. I was like 3 points or 5 points short of passing. Killed me. It was all tokenry. I still hate tokenry. Okay. Give you an idea about money, right? Looking at the Cisco guides, the Kindle versions are running me about $55. Sometimes they're on sale. Could vary a bit. The paper copies are a little more, right? Third-party books seem to run anywhere from about $30 to $65 or so. No, that's just the book. Sometimes they have kits and it'll give you access to a lab, and there's going to have more money to that, right? So maybe 150. I certainly remember that way back in the day, the Microsoft self-footing, just the book might be like $30, $40, but the book and with the CD and the rest of it was like 75. Same thing. Classes, in-person classes, around $3,000. Very little. The shorter ones are less. These boot camps, the idea of a boot camp like CCNA, you're going to show up. They're going to drill you like crazy. They're going to give you an opportunity to test, and the idea is you're going to leave your cert. There are some requirements, so you may not do it in that window, but they're supposed to be more intense, drive you to get it. CCNP was about 6,000. Now that you needed to have your CCNA, that was a prerequisite. You already put some money into it. The boot camps will be at 6,000. Now the courses were going to be more than that by themselves, but sometimes finding the 6,000 is a lot harder than finding 3,000. Or certainly as your employer looks at it and goes, well, I can give you 3,000 this year and I'll give you 3,000 next year, right? And you're like, yeah, but if I just get 6,000 now, I should be able to get it and get it done. Online classes at Stormwind Studios, for example, it's about 2,000 if you just want one course. But see, they're gonna entice you. They're gonna say for 3,000, you can have access for a year to every one of our courses. It's a good deal. Courses are pretty good. I've been liking them so far. I'll let you know as I pass more stuff that I'm still happy. Now, I found things like Udemy was offering classes for $13. Now, I don't think they're officially Cisco blessed. I haven't signed up for one, so I can't tell you is it good enough or not. But certainly, if you want to try that, you can find a lot of these online things like $13. It can't hurt. And if you do something, maybe you want to do some of these classes as supplements to review or whatever, $13 isn't bad. And of course, there are still things like, look, I'm giving you free advice and training on things. So maybe some of this can also work in it. I know there was YouTube series on CCNA practice. There's all kinds of stuff. Okay, the labs. The boson net sem for CCNP, 349. Now that CCNP also gave you access to the CCENT, or CCI, IND, yeah, IND 1 and 2, CCNA, so it's a whole series you're practicing for, not just CCNP. I saw these kits for around $300, and I'm just kind of back a napkin, not. You could probably end up a lab for around $200 off eBay, but like I said, shipping is going to hurt. So it may end up a lot more, depending on where you are. And of course, you want guarantees and stuff running. I bought some access points, and one of the SIM boards had broken loose. I was able to fix it later, but the guy did ship me a new one. Okay, test prep 100 or more. Test prep is not created equal. I've been using the Pearson. It's measureiup.com is the vendor I'm doing it through. Those have been pretty good. I tried Kaplan. Sorry guys, I didn't think it was very good. I used to love them. They used to be Transcender. Transcender was the best. I did all my Microsoft stuff. I did Transcender like mad. They did better for other vendors. I don't know, the Cisco stuff. I was doing way too well. I switched to Pearson. I went from like getting 70s and 80s to getting to like 60s on Pearson. And where I eventually ended up on the Pearson was where I ended up on the CCNA test. I'm happy about that. And back in the day, the Transcender, I was doing pretty well, and I was doing awesome when I taking the Microsoft tests. I was getting like 970s out of 1,000. I missed like one or two things. Right? Spend the money on test prep. Often the test prep in these books and all that, not so good. They're okay. They give you general knowledge, but the Pearson thing was great because it's actually, I found, harder than the real exams because they never let you use the question mark. They never let you shorten anything. You got to do full commands. And of course, there are times, and the real exam is like this as well, where you get something and tell you, that command isn't available. Well, it's because it's supposed to be show IP protocols, plural. So you show IP protocol, that's not, not working. It doesn't hint at all. They go, you're almost there, buddy. It just not, right? So this thing makes you do it all, and so you get better at those little details. It's frustrating. My wife will tell you how much I was swearing when I was running that first test. It's like, it was kind of obnoxious. But it was there, right? So there you go. You mean, you get a full-time job, maybe you can go use your therapy with your employee assistance program, for like, these tests are making me crazy. There you go. And it'd be one of your benefits, right? Okay. Oops, that didn't belong in here. And then your homework. Okay, your employer might be impressed if you show the initiative to do your research, have shown progress, and come with a plan. If you just say, "Well, boss, I've never had a cert in my life, and I want to get my CCIE." If you came to me with that one, I'm like, that's nice. In fact, I'll tell this story. I had these consultants come in. This was for year 2000. Had a financial system need to be upgraded. They were experts in it. We were not. And there was some custom coding in there. We definitely knew we couldn't handle that. It had its own language that was unique to this product. So I'd have trouble even finding a contractor to do the work. So that's cool. We're going to bring them in. And they were kind of swaggering about how smart they are and the rest of it. And they were all like, oh, yeah. And like one of them perks up and like, oh, we're CCNE, MCSE, sorry, that's in training. And I'm like, oh, really? How many tests you passed? None. Oh, give me a break. No. You passed one test, you're a Microsoft Certified Professional, MCP, and then you had 5 more tests to pass. Then you got your MCSE. And I'm like, well, I have my MCSE. Donna has her MCSE. Phil's an MCP. I'm going down the room like, we're all better certified than you, so shut up, right? When you walk in like that, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. Don't do that. But if you've already what's his cost? I've researched different vendors. He's got a correct reputation. I've already been working on the self-study. If you can walk in, you want your CCNA, and you've already got yourself through self-study to that first CCNE, that says a lot. When I worked for, they're mostly a hardware vendor. I was in the consulting side of the business, but I remember I was new, right? And our head of training is like, if you want to get ahead in this organization, you need your A+ certification. That's how he said it. I kid you not. I did it, right? They had a self-study. I put the VHS tapes in, did it, got it. I got all of them, right? There was PC and Mac. I did them both. I'm like, look, I was working out at Adobe, so having a Mac cert made sense. Plus, I like Macs. Yeah, whatever. I showed up with a lot of that stuff. That it showed I already had a record of success, and the more I was able to show, this is the next test I need to do. I'm going to do this one as a self-study. I'm going to do, but I'd like to be able to take this one. That helps. That really helps convince them. If you just kind of, like go do, make this for me, like you should make me into something. No. Okay. And I'm going to say more about that when we get down to the bottom. Okay. And if they say yes, make sure to follow up. That's not just like, hey, boss, when is that PO going to get cut? Which has been a problem at some companies. But it's also, attending the class, showing that you learned something from it. If you can demonstrate that, weave that into your work somehow, like, oh yeah, hey, how come we're not doing this? High security, maybe you really want to be doing DHCP snooping and ARP inspection, a lot of those others. Source guard, all that stuff. Maybe you want to do that. You know how to do it, you demonstrate in the lab. That's the more you do, that's why Donna was so great. We provide this testing, self-studies, classes, whatever worked, and then it's like, oh, look what I did with it. She was really good about that. When you fail, you make it harder for the next person. And one company, I remember, they were like, oh, we don't really like doing certification. Some of the other non-IT folks, well, we sent them this Excel class, and to the folks, it was a 2-day class, and they skipped out on lunch the first day, and they never went back. I said, did you fire them? Did you fire them? They cheated the company, and now you're telling me, like, I can't get training from my people because these two people years ago did something that certainly was stealing from the company. That's not right. But that's exactly the kind of stuff we follow. Now, look, they were cheap. I'll tell you that. It's cheap that HR, very, well, she might have said frugal. I say cheap. Tomato, tomato. You follow up, you do your test, the rest of it, when there's this pile of all these self-studies and the rest of it, you had bought for you and you never even cracked the plastic. Yeah. Now, I will say at least the self-studies, send them my way. I'll get them done, right? For the employer, don't spend the whole budget all at once, right? So I'm going to buy all these, everybody a self-study, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, probably not the best way to go about it, because you may find like your vendor, like with CBTs, maybe they're lousy, right? Maybe I can buy, or I want to get some demos. If you're big enough, you can say, hey, can I get some demos of this? So, I wanted like the CCENT, this CCIND one. Can I get it like a demo that I can run somebody through it and see if it's worth a while, right? Or give me a discount. I want to buy that one, and then, we talk more. And of course, as the versions change, right? You invest all this money and you're like, oh, now we're going to be running Windows 16 or whatever the latest greatest is, right? Now you got all this stuff for like, oh, I saw this Windows 2003 stuff. Yeah, I know. Keep your team making progress. You need to kind of crack the whip on some of them. Some of them are going to be great. Donna, I never need to crack the whip on Donna. Never. Others needed more encouragement. Okay. So in their goals, that's what we do. That's why I included yearly or even quarterly goals. Here's what we see to get done this quarter. Right. Now, to be fair, because does require a lot out of them, it's the yearly goals. If you have to push too hard, that's cool, but I'm not going to invest as much. If I have to push you really hard to agree in your goal to get to X, I'm not going to be that motivated to pay as much for your training. That's kind of the way to do it. If they're like, if they have a good track record, and they're like, yeah, I want to get, I really, I want to, by the end of the year, I'm going to do my CCIE written. Cool. Okay. How am I going to support you in that? What kind of time do I need to give you? Are there the classes? What do I need to do to make that happen, right? If you have a good track record of meeting it, that can mean your goal, right? And then quarterly, if we sit down and maybe like, okay, what kind of what books have you finished? How do you feel on this topic? Have you already, you started doing your lab practice? I can ask those questions, right? And again, make sure they put it to use. And that's what I think needs to be directed. The thing is that some companies treat training like it's a perk. Like, well, if I don't give you training, you get really annoyed. So whatever. If you can show some vague connection to work, no, put it to work. I mean, I directed myself, so like you've seen all my multicast classes. Well, because I was struggling with multicast and I really wanted to get a leg up on it, so I took the class. I'm like, please let me take this class. I almost was willing to pay for it myself, almost. You know, I had a lot of things going on, so I didn't. But almost, serious. Um, Make sure they put it to use, and then direct them to meet your organizational needs. So um, one of my examples of that is that back when Exchange 5.5, I worked with an organization. We were running Exchange. Our sister um, companies were running Notes, Lotus Notes, and Microsoft did have this Lotus Notes connector. We had this when we were exchanging address books essentially manually. So if someone gets hired and they decide they were sending like emails back and forth, say, here's this new person, this is their email, you can add them to your global address list. So you're manually creating contacts. If they ever changed it or we fat fingered something and we don't discover it right away, it was just a mess, right? The Lotus Notes connector though. So I sent Phil to Notes class. He's like, it's kind of like, why me? Because Phil, have the most notes experience of anyone on the team, so you're going. Oh, okay, fine. And I gave them the resources, right? Um, so that when we made this work, the other side, they didn't know their notes that well. Phil knew it better. So they're like, oh, see, your connector is working. No, you need to grant permission to the connector at this gateway. Then it'll work. And it did. He got it to work. And Microsoft didn't have a lot of takers on it, so they were pretty pleased with this as well. It was good. We could have had consultants do that. And in fact, we talked to consultants about it. Most were like, oh, we never done it, blah, blah, blah. In fact, they gave us access through them, access to resources at Microsoft Direct. So, that was great. We had this huge need that we solved because we put in that training. And I swear to you, sometimes the consultants, you'll do this thing. Like when we went with a fax server product, okay, we needed the cover pages to customize. Here's this consultant, flips out the book, starts flipping through the pages like, I don't know how to do this. I know how to install. I don't know how to do this. This was in the scope of work. You don't know how to do it? It was really stupid to show up on site and not be ready to do it. Because we bought the product from them too. It wasn't like we said, oh, we're going to buy this fax server and you have to figure it out. No. Yeah, consultants are not the end all be all. A lot of times they've never done it. So you can direct the training right. If I had sent like my folks off to whatever product that was, can't even think of it anymore. It wasn't land fax, it was right fax probably. But whatever it was, I could probably send them to training classes and we would have internally been ready to do this. And I paid a consultant. Okay. So that's really what I wanted to say on this thing. Big thing is good luck. You do it. And I was reading a CCI writing about this and said essentially, yep, it's going to be all consuming. And it really can be. When I went on my big jag at first, when I picked up a lot of my certs, oh yeah, I had a book with me everywhere. Now I sort of do anyway, because that's who I am and I'm right. But I mean a technical book. And you may be sort of consumed by it all. But the stuff is hard. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. You do have to research, so you're not taking that book out in the backyard and setting fire to it when you're done. You're going to buy the next version and a couple of years down the road to be ready for the next one. Just there it is. I think it's worthwhile. You can be good at what you do and not be certified, absolutely. And there's some fields, traditionally Unix, didn't care. In fact, I almost thought sometimes they kind of scorned certification because it showed that you didn't really know what you're doing. You had to go learn from a book. I've been doing this for 30 years and I can script my way up one side, down the other, and sure, fine. All right. That's great. There are Red Hat has certs for Linux. Yeah. And there's a Linux Plus for CompTIA. Okay. But some things, maybe not. And nowadays, like Amazon Web Services, Azure has training and testing. Those are sort of the new things. Now, one of the challenges, I got to say this, you're invested in a particular technology, and technology is constantly shifting. How do you make those adjustments? How do you move from being like a Catalyst guy into Nexus? Well, you're diving down and climbing back up again. You've shown you can do it. You know the process. Now it's a matter of, and it may be faster. There are some very un-Catalyst-like things about Nexus, but it's still Cisco. It's still, there's still route maps and there's still prefix lists and all those things. Sometimes the syntax looks a little different. So you can do it. It's hard. It may be hard as a consultant to sort of pick up from one to the next because they're paying you for good high-end Catalyst work, and now, hey, this Nexus, well, you don't have Nexus on your resume, right? Because I've been deep in Catalyst. It can be done. Thanks for watching. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can clip the slide on SlideShare or whatever and get that whole thing. You can also look for it, Tuesday Tech Talks. And I cross-reference it in my Facebook and that sort of thing. And LinkedIn, certainly I always post the link on LinkedIn. Facebook, you can follow me. If I know you, I'll friend you. If not, I won't, typically. Unless you're particularly interesting. And that's not like these women with like these revealing photos and that's their entire profile. It's like, that just doesn't seem right. Like, sorry. So no, I don't follow those people. And then you follow me on Twitter, right? There you go. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty permissive on LinkedIn. There is one in my LinkedIn feed that I'm like, it's from Nigeria. It's kind of weird. I'm like, oh, why are you following me? Hopefully, Nigeria has a bad rap, right? I'm sure there are good people in Nigeria, but it's sort of like, is he trying to steal my identity or something? Oh my God. Sorry, that's me. LinkedIn, there you go. And, look for the picture. Well, yeah. And suggest topics in the comments or questions. I'm pretty open. Some things are more complicated are going to take longer to get to. If I don't know it very well, I may pass on it. Certainly a lot of this is based on inspiration and what I'm doing right now. And certainly I'll do more, like I want to do a unit on quality of service. I need to kind of dig back into it, but I'm very focused right now on finishing up my CCNP, so on route and switch, so maybe some topics will come out of there. I gotta tell you this, certification has actually been really good, and these tech talks have been great because it's made me really dig in and understand the technology better. In a multicast, to do what I did, I didn't even have like a set of slides. I just had the slides. I did find there's some talks you can find online from Cisco Live various times that are pretty well done. They go through a lot of topics, more than I did actually. Not in depth in some of those spaces, but talk more about IPv6 and bidirectional and a few other things that I avoided. And they're great, but they don't have the verbiage around it, right? So they're only so good. To be able to talk about this thing intelligently, it's had to take a lot of studies. So it's actually very helpful. That's why I'm going to keep doing this thing. I keep saying I'll do it less. I do have some interruptions. I travel more now in a new job, which you've seen if you're on follow me on LinkedIn. But definitely going to keep this stuff up. And thanks for being here. And we'll talk to y'all soon.